On January the 30th, 1649, the English killed their king. It had happened before, of course, all those Edwards and Richards violently done in by their own subjects. But this was different. Now the British monarchy itself had been exterminated. Now there was just the people and its parliament, the keepers of the liberties of England. But what was the point of freedom when you were frightened? What the people really wanted to know was, who would keep them safe? Who would stop the soldiers from burning and pillaging, allow people to sleep quietly in their beds? Who would protect them from the wars of religion and politics which seemed to go on and on and on? Would it be Parliament, or would it be a great general like Oliver Cromwell? It doesn't matter, said the hard-headed philosopher Thomas Hobbes, a royalist who'd come back to Cromwell's England. What the country needs is a strong ruler who embodies all the people. Whatever or whoever can save the country from anarchy, whatever can save you from yourselves. Never mind about what's right or wrong. Put yourself in the hands of the power that protects, the all-powerful Leviathan. If that's Oliver Cromwell, then so be it. It's the reasonable thing to do. But the Scots, the English and the Irish were not about to be reasonable because they were much too busy being righteous. Over the next half-century, righteousness would kill a lot of the British. At the end of it all, reason would appear, but not before a lot of tears have been shed. Tears of rapture and tears of grief. Not everyone was lying awake at night, biting their nails about the plight of kingless Britain. For many, this was the dawn of a new age. It's true, no one had foreseen this during the civil wars, but in giving them victory, the Almighty had shown them that Albion must be turned into Jerusalem. He had lain the Stuart kings in the dust. The only king to follow now was King Jesus, and the only true government, that of his saints.
Let them sing aloud upon their beds. Let the high praises of God be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand.
The kingdom of God was at hand, the most blessed revolution of all, and no one was more convinced of this than Albion's holy warrior, Oliver Cromwell.
Religion was not at first the thing contended for, but God brought it to that issue at last, and at last it proved that which was most dear to us.
Cromwell called himself a seeker, and what he sought all his life was God's destiny for himself and for his country. At first, he'd been innocent of the Lord's design. For years, he'd just led the life of an obscure East Anglian country gentleman. Just as Cromwell was beginning to make his way in the world, some sort of crisis happened to his modest fortune. But what the world might have seen as misfortune was, through the cunning of the Almighty, his saving grace. He underwent some kind of religious conversion. the vanities were stripped away so he might be opened to the light.
Oh, I lived in and loved darkness and hated the light. This is true. I hated godliness, yet God had mercy on me. Oh, the riches of his mercy.
The sense that God had some special service for him made a new man of Cromwell. He knew where he was going. He knew what had to be done. What had to be done was to tear the sword out of the hands of the untrustworthy, papist-loving king. He went to war as a complete novice with no military experience whatsoever, but his sense of divine appointment was his armor. It made him supremely confident, cool under fire, but never reckless. An aura of invincibility began to cling to him. He became the driving force of the godly revolution. When the vanquished king defied God's judgment, his blood was needed to expiate the crime. But it became obvious that doing away with the monarch was no guarantee of doing away with the monarchy. For if Charles couldn't be among his subjects in person, his proxy could. The Greek word icon means both an image and a copy, and the icon basilicae, the spitting image of the king, appeared within a week of his execution. It was an instant bestseller, going through 35 editions in a year, and it made Charles an imperishable martyr. A latter-day Christ, sacrificed for the sins of his people. Like Christ, Charles too would be resurrected, wearing his heavenly crown, and made flesh in the person of his son, Charles II, awaiting the call from exile in France. The poet John Milton, an ardent champion of the parliamentary commonwealth, was hired to attack the cult of the king martyr as so much wicked idolatry. To persuade the fearful and the gullible, they didn't need a Charles I. In fact, they didn't need any Stuart monarch. Look, he wanted to say, just stop worrying about the dead king. You're the sovereign now. Come to think of it, you've always been the sovereign. Kings have been yours, to hire or fire. But when Cromwell and Milton told the people that it was time for them to govern themselves, they didn't, of course, mean to be taken literally. What? Every jumped-up weaver or ploughman with some sixpenny book learning, announcing he'd just appointed himself the magistrate of mucking on the wold, granting himself the vote? Heaven forbid! That way lay chaos. No, the people should put the government of the state into the hands of the kind of men God saw fittest to exercise it, incorruptible men of substance and piety. Oh, I see, said freeborn John Lilburne, the leveller, an ex-army officer who wanted to level the distance between the mighty and the humble, the rich and the poor. You mean the same kind of people who got us into this mess in the first place. We've all known a John Lilburne, haven't we? Some of us have even been John Lilburne. First to the barricades, first to be arrested, won't shut up. But love him or hate him, you know he won't go away. To Squire Cromwell, he was a pain in the neck, a dangerous loudmouth, capable of wrecking discipline in the army.